My brother's text arrived on a Thursday evening, brief and utterly without apology. Hey, probably best if you skip the barbecue this weekend. Keep things simple. No explanation. No acknowledgement that this represented the fourth family gathering in a row. He'd quietly excluded me from over the past year. I set my phone down on my kitchen counter and stared at it for a long moment, genuinely processing exactly how casually my own brother had come to treat my presence within our family as something optional, something inconvenient he could simply text away whenever it suited him. 3 weeks later, Ansel walked into my office for a scheduled interview, visibly stunned to discover exactly whose company he'd actually applied to work for. Stick with me because that specific meeting changed everything about how my brother would ever again think twice before excluding me from anything. My name is Annika Sorensen. I'm 32 years old and my brother Ansel, 29, had developed over the preceding year a consistent pattern of quietly excluding me from family gatherings, always through brief, unexplained text messages rather than any genuine conversation regarding whatever specific tension had apparently developed between us. I run Birchwood Consulting, a management consulting firm I founded 5 years ago that has grown considerably throughout recent years. Though I've always maintained genuine privacy regarding my professional life during family interactions, a choice that would prove, once Ansel unknowingly applied for a position at my own company, considerably more significant than I could have anticipated. That specific barbecue exclusion represented simply the latest in a troubling pattern I'd been quietly absorbing throughout the preceding year, never quite confronting Ansel directly regarding exactly why he'd apparently decided my presence within our family's gatherings had become something he preferred to manage around rather than genuinely include. I first noticed Ansel's shifting behavior roughly 14 months before that specific barbecue text, missing an invitation to our cousin's engagement party that I later learned everyone else in our immediate family had actually attended, an oversight Ansel explained vaguely, when I finally asked directly, as simply assuming I was too busy with work to want to attend. That explanation, while plausible enough in isolation, became considerably less convincing once similar patterns repeated throughout the following months. A holiday gathering where I received a text claiming plans had changed, only to learn later that the original gathering had proceeded exactly as planned without me. A birthday celebration for our mother that Ansel organized entirely through calls and messages that somehow never quite reached me until after the event had already concluded. I recognized, gradually, that these weren't genuine oversights or miscommunications, but rather a deliberate, if quietly executed, pattern of exclusion that Ansel had apparently decided to maintain without ever directly explaining his actual reasoning to me. I'd asked him directly, on 2 separate occasions throughout that year, whether something specific had happened between us that I wasn't aware of, questions he deflected each time with vague reassurances that everything was fine, and that I was probably just overthinking things. Responses that felt considerably less reassuring than genuinely dismissive. I eventually learned, through a conversation with our mother roughly 2 months before that specific barbecue exclusion, additional context regarding what had apparently prompted Ansel's gradual withdrawal throughout the preceding year, context that revealed something considerably more calculated than simple social awkwardness or oversight. He mentioned feeling like you'd become kind of judgmental about his career choices, our mother told me carefully, clearly uncomfortable serving as an unintended messenger for a conversation Ansel had apparently never intended to have directly with me. Something about a comment you made a while back about him needing more direction professionally. I remembered that specific comment clearly, a genuinely gentle, caring conversation from roughly 18 months earlier where I'd expressed some concern regarding Ansel's repeated job changes, offering at the time to help connect him with professional contacts if he ever wanted assistance finding more stable employment, an offer I'd made from genuine sisterly concern rather than any judgment I'd intended as harsh or dismissive. Ansel had apparently interpreted that entire conversation considerably more negatively than I'd ever intended, allowing what I genuinely meant as supportive concern to fester into resentment significant enough that he'd chosen quiet, unexplained exclusion rather than any direct conversation addressing his actual feelings about that earlier interaction. Throughout that same period of gradually developing family tension, I'd been building Birchwood Consulting into a genuinely successful firm, growing from a small solo operation into a company employing nearly 30 people, specializing in operational efficiency consulting for mid-sized regional businesses throughout our area. I'd maintained deliberate privacy regarding this professional growth throughout my interactions with extended family, partly from simple preference for keeping work and family separate, And partly, I recognize now, from a certain reluctance to seem like I was competing with or overshadowing Ansel's own less stable professional trajectory throughout those same years. My company had recently posted an opening for an operations coordinator position, a role I wasn't personally involved in screening applicants for given my own senior leadership responsibilities. Our HR director, Delacroix Monroe, handling initial candidate review and scheduling before senior leadership conducted final interviews for promising candidates. I had no idea, throughout that specific hiring process, that my own brother had applied for that exact position, his application apparently reaching our final interview round without either of us realizing the genuinely surprising connection until the actual scheduled interview itself. I learned, reviewing my calendar the morning of several scheduled final round interviews, that one candidate's name, Ansel Sorensen, appeared on my afternoon schedule, a discovery that genuinely stunned me given how specifically uncommon our particular surname combination happened to be within our regional area. I confirmed with Delacroix that this candidate did indeed represent my own brother, learning that his application had genuinely impressed our hiring team throughout the initial screening process, his relevant experience and interview performance during earlier rounds apparently strong enough to warrant this final meeting with senior leadership. I considered, briefly, whether recusing myself from this specific interview might represent the more appropriate professional choice given our family relationship, but ultimately decided, given both my company's genuine need for qualified candidates and my own growing curiosity regarding how this particular situation might unfold, to proceed with the scheduled meeting as originally planned. I sat in my office that afternoon, genuinely uncertain exactly how Ansel would react upon realizing exactly whose company he'd actually applied to, waiting for the specific, revealing moment his scheduled interview would inevitably bring. Ansel walked into my office at his scheduled time, dressed professionally, clearly prepared for what he'd anticipated would be an ordinary final round interview, his expression shifting rapidly through several stages of confusion and, eventually, unmistakable shock as he processed exactly who was sitting behind that desk waiting to interview him. "Annika," he said, his voice carrying genuine disbelief. You run this company?" "I founded it 5 years ago," I told him, maintaining professional composure despite the genuinely significant personal weight of this specific moment. "Please have a seat. I'd still like to conduct this interview properly, if you're comfortable proceeding." I watched Ansel process this revelation throughout those first several minutes, his earlier interview confidence visibly shaken as he clearly reconsidered everything he thought he'd understood about my own professional life throughout the preceding years of quiet family exclusion. "I had no idea," he said finally, settling into the chair across from my desk. "You never mentioned any of this. You never asked," I told him simply, my voice carrying no particular anger, simply clear, direct truth regarding exactly how thoroughly our family communication had deteriorated throughout the preceding year. I proceeded with that interview with genuine professional integrity, asking Ansel the same substantive questions regarding his relevant experience and specific qualifications that I would have asked any other final round candidate, understanding that maintaining appropriate professional standards mattered considerably more than either favoring or unfairly disadvantaging him given our unexpected family connection. Ansel answered those questions with genuine competence throughout our conversation, his actual qualifications for the position proving considerably stronger than I might have anticipated given his previous pattern of less stable employment, evidence suggesting he'd genuinely grown and developed professionally throughout recent years in ways our family's limited, strained communication had never actually allowed me to fully appreciate or understand. Near the conversation's conclusion, Ansel addressed the obvious personal tension directly, his voice carrying genuine discomfort. "I feel like I need to say something about the barbecue thing, and honestly this whole past year, I think I let some hurt feelings turn into something I never should have let go on this long." I appreciated this acknowledgement, though I maintained professional boundaries throughout the remainder of our scheduled interview time, suggesting we continue this particular conversation more fully outside our professional context, rather than allowing it to complicate the legitimate hiring decision still requiring genuine, fair consideration. Ansel and I met for dinner later that same week, finally having the direct, honest conversation regarding our year of gradually accumulated distance that neither of us had genuinely initiated throughout the preceding months of quiet exclusion and unexplained tension. "I took that comment about my career way more personally than you probably intended," he admitted. "And instead of just talking to you about it, I just started quietly pulling away, telling myself it was easier than having an actually uncomfortable conversation. I acknowledged, in turn, that I should have pushed considerably harder for genuine clarity rather than accepting his vague deflections throughout those earlier conversations where I directly asked whether something specific had changed between us. I let it go because I didn't want to seem like I was forcing you into a conversation you clearly didn't want to have, I told him. But that just meant we both let this go on considerably longer than it ever needed to. We talked honestly throughout that entire dinner about both the original misunderstanding and the broader pattern of assumption and quiet withdrawal that had allowed it to genuinely damage our relationship throughout that entire preceding year. I ultimately recused myself from the final hiring decision regarding Ansel's specific application, asking Delacroix and another senior team member to make that determination independently based purely on his actual qualifications and interview performance, wanting to ensure the decision reflected genuine professional merit, rather than any complicated family dynamic, potentially influencing the outcome in either direction. Ansel was ultimately offered the position based on his own genuine qualifications, a decision I felt comfortable with precisely because I deliberately removed myself from any direct influence over that specific outcome, ensuring whatever role he might eventually hold at Birchwood Consulting reflected legitimate professional achievement rather than any family favoritism. We discussed carefully, before he formally accepted the position, exactly how we wanted to navigate our professional relationship going forward, agreeing on clear boundaries regarding maintaining appropriate distance between our family relationship and his actual reporting structure within the company, structure that would place him under a different department entirely from my own direct oversight. Standing in my office roughly a year after that genuinely surprising interview, watching Ansel walk past my open door on his way to a meeting with his own direct supervisor, I thought often about that brief, dismissive text message that had once represented the exact low point of our relationship's gradual deterioration. I'd learned, throughout that entire experience, something genuinely important about how easily misunderstanding and unaddressed hurt can quietly accumulate into significant relationship damage when neither party genuinely pushes toward direct, honest conversation rather than convenient, unexplained distance. Our relationship rebuilt considerably throughout that following year, both as siblings and as colleagues, maintaining appropriate professional boundaries, marked by considerably more honest communication than we'd ever previously maintained, communication that ensured whatever future tension might eventually arise between us would receive genuine, direct conversation rather than quiet, unexplained exclusion. I don't know whether Ansel and I would have ever genuinely repaired that specific rift without the particular unexpected circumstance of his walking into my office that afternoon, and I've made genuine peace with the strange, meaningful way that professional coincidence ultimately forced the honest conversation our family relationship had genuinely needed throughout that entire difficult year.